Well, here we are in early May at BASF Rawcliffe Bridge, looking at one of the largest early drilling trials of winter wheat in the UK. This is a trial site put together with the cooperation of a number of the major breeders, but I'm also here with Bill Angus today to look at certain of the varieties and look at some of the morphology and the disease levels that are taking place.
This site's going to be interesting because one of the coldest winters we've had for many years is going to produce a great deal of challenges, both for the wheat crop and for the growers as well. Particularly the crops that are early sown are going to have some severe challenges as we move forward this year, particularly in disease. We're seeing big increases in septoria compared to normal years, possibly as a reflection of the damage caused by frost and snow during the winter, and that's going to be a big challenge. We thought yellow rust was going to be a big challenge anyway, and I think we're going to see actually a double whammy, both of those diseases prevalent in these crops. Basically, this is the early developing variety that we looked at earlier, and you see that the ear is already well up the stem. It should really, on an early sown crop, still be somewhere down here, but it's moved up here, and it's now in a very dangerous situation because we can still expect some cold weather at this time of year. So there you are, that's the ear fully developed already, and that will have already set down its flowering biology. Already in there will be the stamens with the anthers, the ovaries already established. So it's a very vulnerable piece of architecture that shouldn't really be exposed to the risk that it's going to be. Look at the big morphological differences between the two types of varieties, and farmers should really look carefully, not just at the recommended list and say, oh, I'm just going to take the highest yielding variety. Look at whether it actually has the attributes necessary for this very tricky and very high risk situation. What you want in a variety is a long growing season variety. It's one which initiates its primordia late. There are other characteristics, particularly good disease resistance, good standing power, particularly root disease resistance. So there's many characteristics, but possibly the most important is to get those primordia, an understanding of the primordia development, and make sure that you avoid those late frosts that can occur and are likely to reduce yield by really 5 or 10%. Farmers often don't see it, but that's actually the reality. In terms of disease, what we're seeing here is very high levels of septoria, surprisingly high levels really. In terms of the risks that growers are taking, a very simple rule of thumb is that if you take the ratings that are on the recommended list, by drilling early you'll take a point off each of those ratings. So for instance, if you have a yellow rust rating of 5, that will drop down to a 4 if you early drill it. If you have a standing power rating of 8, that will become a 7. So you can see now that you're building up the risks that are inherent just by drilling early. Many of the varieties that we're coming through now, if you look at their pedigrees, have not got good eye spot resistance, and that makes them particularly prone to eye spot coming in. And even the first wheats, which are drilled early, are actually transformed into what I call pseudo second wheats. They actually will operate like second wheats because you're drilling so much earlier. You'd expect that with the long winter we might be seeing something different this year to the previous years, but actually that's not really the case. A lot of these varieties are driven by day length, and if you think about it, the day length is the same every year. So the day length response kicks in. It's the day length insensitive ones which are still going to kick off early. The ones which have got a strong day length response, i.e. they're waiting for the longer days of spring, they're the ones that are still slow. So although we are seeing minor differences, the pecking order, the range in which they're coming out is actually just as we would expect.
The early drilling trial here at BASF Rawcliffe Bridge has allowed us a fascinating insight onto how different varieties have been developing in the last few months, and bringing forward some of the lessons from last year in terms of how rapidly yellow rust developed here. We've had a lovely opportunity to see how those varieties may perform this season. The T1 has already been applied here, and it's been based around one of two products, either Tracker plus Bravo or Tracker plus Inobi Bravo. And that combination at T1 gives a very, very risk-free approach to the crucial time between T1 and T2 sprays. But really the story here is about developing how we should approach the T2 spray. Those farmers with a high risk who have got a weak variety, or indeed may not have had as adequate T1 spray as they might like, really do need to think about how their T2 should be approached. And from the well-known national data that says epoxyconazole is a very reliable triazole, together with Comet as the most active strobilurin, those two together give a very comprehensive cover of both septoria and yellow rust. For those people requiring excellent persistence, addition of boscalid to that in terms of the tracker product gives a fantastic persistence against septoria, in combination with Comet, a very good activity against any yellow rust present as well. One of the benefits of a sequence of tracker rolling through from T1 to T2 is the excellent activity you get on eye spot, and that's particularly pertinent for any early drilling situation where eye spot is known to be a potential problem. It also covers the T1 T2 gap perfectly, and that should really be no more than 4 weeks at the most to ensure adequate coverage for disease throughout that crucial period, leading up to the major effect of T2, which is starting off and protecting the grain fill period. So T2 crucial, include wherever possible epoxyconazole, Comet, the boscalid element of tracker is ideal, and that gives you a very, very good, consistent, risk-free approach to T1, T2 sequences. You also need to consider the formulation benefits of products such as Brutus or indeed Anobi, which are specially formulated so that the active ingredients enter the leaf as fast as possible and deliver cover and protection right from the moment of application. That gives you a brilliant coverage throughout the T1, T2 sequence and allows you to take into account what you might do at T3. Moving through to the T3, it is likely that will be another interesting problem this year. Brutus, fantastic formulation, very active on the ear, great control of fusarium, delivers exactly what you require really for a quality wheat situation. And then finally, if you do require a strobe at the T3 option, there's Swing Gold, which contains also epoxyconazole, which for a late disease situation where you require disease to be taken out, the epoxyconazole in that is very, very useful indeed. So 3 fantastic products for wrapping up the season. What is inevitable with early drilling is that disease is a major potential problem, and you have to minimise the risk of using your crop protection program to the disease pressure you're likely to get from the varietal choices that you've made. What is inevitable is that an early drilled variety will deliver a higher risk of disease by dint of the fact that it's in the ground earlier, and therefore your program has to be approached in a more serious and managed way. That means higher dose rates should be used for these potentially higher yielding crops, and by using higher dose rates you certainly minimise the risk of any potential problems, and that should lead through to a good harvest at the end of the day.